The South Node is at Scorpio 13 and the North Node at Taurus 13. And we are experimenting here with the relationship between how things work on the material level and what's going on the spiritual level, I would say. The nodes guide us forward into a certain path that awakens probably both of these things. It wouldn't really be accurate to say that our spiritual path is disconnected to our material path. How could it be? You know, we're doing everything that we do with the physical body. That's what it's like here on Earth. So the relationship between our material pursuits and our spiritual pursuits is profound and to be discovered. And it's quite interesting to notice that the discovery of spiritual secrets or wisdoms very often afforded us through our commitment to a material activity. And I often think about what was my path. How came I to be the way I am, to know what I have known for some time now? I studied it, but how did I first begin the yearning to study? Where did that come from? Why did I study it? To know what I know now. And the answer is to do with my interface with materiality. I probably learned as much of my spiritual wisdom as an accountant and in business and on the rugby pitch playing sport, you know, with no spiritual intention whatever, but things just hang together in a certain way. And you have to be pretty closed and stupid not to notice that things are a little bit different from how we're told. They hang together in the way that they hang together, and you start wondering about that, and you want to find out, and you find your own way through that. But we do all look. We do all try and understand how it all works together. And this is the principle of the inventor experimenting in Scorpio 13, seeing how everything connects. As a species, we are driven towards greater and greater achievements as our curiosity pursues knowledge. The knowledge is not only how, but also why. Our experiments are both material and philosophical as we try to discover the meaning of life. And the discovery that all things are interconnected is what we finally come up with. This is inevitably a stepping stone, a marker point for any of us seekers. We get at some point to understand what has been taught to us already, probably, that everything is interconnected. And that sounds like a lovely idea, but it doesn't look like that, does it? But you start to look deeper and you notice that it is like that. Everything is interconnected. My in-breath now, my out-breath now, comes from all of the out-breaths of the past and will become all of the in-breaths of the future. Each one of us has breathed in something that Alexander the Great and Jesus Christ breathed out. A small part of it. And therefore everything is connected. If that's not intuitively obvious to you, you could take the metaphor into a more physical form and you'll see it works there too. But everything being connected is the first point in a progress of consciousness which leads to understand that actually we're all one, that unity exists here in all of this diversity. Now the North Node in Taurus 13, a man handling baggage, material acquisition, involvement with society's availability of a material abundance inevitably attracts heavy responsibility and habits of gain and acquisitiveness. These are the qualities of the material world, and they make demands upon us. The pull of materiality leads us to seek possessions and improvements, improving our lot in life. The inclination that a lot of young people have, especially men I've found, is to go for it and get things and get money and get positions and be successful in that material world sense. I certainly was very much like that. I was very pushy, ambitious, aggressive, and I'd had no purpose other than money and title, as far as I can remember. It wasn't anything to do with security. It was to do with triumph. I wanted to be something. And this is shared by many of us. What we notice is that the more and more baggage we accommodate into our lives and collect, because those are the trappings of success and position, the more burdened we are by those trappings. Whatever you acquire through your acquisitiveness, you're going to have to carry and guard. And it's not worth it. Not really. Not if you're a spiritual person. Because you actually want to do the opposite of that. You want to release yourself from burden so that you can feel free to fly into the more cosmic realms. So why is material acquisition centered amongst the Sabian symbols? And it has to do with understanding the opposite configuration. That all things are connected is a profound mystery, very high level of spiritual understanding. And yet the opposite polarity to that in Taurus 13 is that acquisitiveness is the inevitable result of material world obsessiveness. Now, if you go into the material world with a light heart and a sense of curiosity and unattachment, it's wonderful. There are so many lessons to learn, so much to pick up, which have a spiritual significance. But if you get trapped into that material path by wanting things, measuring things, and having things to represent you in the world, I have this house and this car and these things tell my secret. If that's what you want to do, then you will find that ungodly in its burdensomeness. It will be too heavy for you to raise yourself up to the level of God consciousness. You won't do it. Right? In the Bible it says straight is the gate. It's more difficult to get into the worldly, the heavenly realms than it is for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. And that's because the camel's filled with things, all of its kind of bulk of goods that it's carrying can't go through this needle. This is a thin gate. And it's like that with us. We can't go into heaven carrying a ton of cabbages or a brand new Rolls Royce or 100,000 euros. We just can't get in. It's too heavy. Those things are really, really heavy. And they won't go through this straight gate that leads us into the secret garden, the path of heavenliness. And this isn't when we die. Of course we can't take it with us, but we can't take it with us here on earth either. You can't get into that heavenly state of freedom and spiritual glory and happiness if you're carrying too much. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't have these things. You can have all the cars you want, as long as you don't need them. If you've got all these playthings because you like playing, that's great, as long as you also like not playing with them. And if you like owning things, that's great, as long as it's also okay if you like not owning them. And if you do materialism, then it's a good idea to do a non-materialistic chapter of your life. See what it's like without anything. See what it's like living on very little. A very ardent spiritual seeker friend of mine, when he was very young, even though he was working full-time and getting a proper wage, he made sure he only lived on the equivalent amount had he been unemployed. So he lived on the sort of level of welfare, and he lived very simply, just out of some spiritual test or empathy with the unemployed. It was a big deal in those days, and as it is, or will be soon. just making sure that you don't need more than the minimum is a protection against the seductive pull that imprisons you in materialism. So these two 13s, Scorpio, Taurus, the sense of understanding the underlying meaning of life in Scorpio, and then applying that in Taurus to the material world. And Taurus is very good at working things out on the material level, and they're not quite as good as detaching themselves from the fruits of their work. So, as with any Taurus person, each of us has its own, our own challenge to know that we can have abundance if we want it, measured in baggage. If we want that to, we can do that if we choose to, but we choose not to. Now that choice not to is not available unless you make sure you can have it. But to have something and then give it up is tremendously beneficial on the spiritual level. It gives you such a thrill of freedom. There's nothing like the rush of freedom that you feel when you just say, "No, I'm giving all of that up." And that's what they do in India. They traditionally, anyway, they walk away from their material world as successes, and they walk into the forest with nothing but their clothes, and they find a way with that. And that sense of total liberation from the heaviness, the burden of baggage in life is great glory. And that's a springboard to a very much higher spiritual station.